You have plenty of them. I'll pay you the difference.
Well, I've only got this is my so what I got now. Oh yeah, this is two unopened 20s, and I got an open 20.
I was all excited about my first Pappy find ever, and then you shit on it.
Always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single-barrel bourbon to try with some help from one of their friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly and be 21. Do you ever pour yourself a bourbon, swirl it around, and then start struggling to come up with tasting notes? And perhaps you're also looking for a good Father's Day gift idea. Well, you can now solve both with a kit from Knows Your Bourbon. And unlike other nosing kits on the market, Knows Your Bourbon kits feature real ingredients for the most authentic aromas. You can smell real Tahitian vanilla bean instead of some synthetic aroma that's just made from chemicals. So head on over to knowsyourbourbon.com and enter code BP10 for 10% off your order. From their bar to yours, Chad and Sarah of the popular YouTube channel It's Bourbon Night bring you their favorite at-home old-fashioned mix with the new Elemental Elixir's Golden Hour Syrup. It's a custom-made syrup with notes of bold black tea, warm spices, and orange zest. All you need is your favorite whiskey and ice. No bitters needed. One bottle makes 16 drinks, so that's only $1 a cocktail before you add your own whiskey. They can also be enjoyed in other cocktails or spirits, mocktails, coffee, tea, and anything you can think of. It's crafted locally in Lexington, Kentucky, and you can get your bottle now at whiskeyambitions.com. Ed Bly and Rising Tide Spirits are back again with a new release of Old Stubborn Bourbon. And this release of Old Stubborn is a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year cask strength, barely filtered pot still bourbon. It comes in at a staggering 123.8 proof. And the flavoring grain for this one, which the last one was wheated, but this time it's now rye. Rich, sweet, and bold with a long finish that's sure to be another eye-opener. You can order online at Sealbox or thebourbonconcierge.com, and you can even purchase in person at Revival Vintage Spirits, and even now with very few select stores in Kentucky. You can get it now while you can, but be sure to do it because it's not going to last long.
Play Whiskey Wednesday Round 11, the memory game. Until June 26, each week you can win one of our 12 incredible grand prizes. Select $2 at checkout. And if they match on drawing night, you'll win that bottle. Not a match? No worries. You still score a Weller 12-year. Every $5 ticket gives you 5 chances to win, including 4 weekly bonus prizes. Get your tickets now at give270.org. Charitable Gaming License ORG 0002703.
Bringing to you the best stories from icons in the bourbon industry, it's Bourbon Pursuit. Now here are your hosts, Ryan and Kenny.
And we're back with another episode of the Bourbon Pursuit podcast. My name is Kenny, and as always, I've got my co-host Ryan. Ryan, how are we doing this evening?
I'm feeling angry because today Pappy hit spring release here in Louisville, and I went to a liquor store, got a 12, and then you follow up and got a 20 right after me. Yeah. So I'm feeling frustrated.
You know, it's funny because we put that on our Twitter feed, and we had one reply back that just said, you know, every year they always say, no, there's not going to be a spring release, and like clockwork, it always comes around.
Yeah, that was my first Pappy find, so I was really pumped up and like, yes, I did it. And then you text me back later, haha, thanks, Ryan, for the lead. I got a 20. And I'm like, oh, man. But,
yeah, I mean, that's, you know, we talked about in our first episode of the podcast of how we had these hunting parties, about how we have all these groups kind of come together to try to share information about, you know, where everybody should go. And Ryan gives us all a tip of where to go. And he's like, but they only have 10s and 12s. And I go in there because they know my face a little bit. And they're like, yeah, sure. What do you want?
I guess I got to shop there a little bit more or something.
It's all about the relationships, right?
That's right. That's right. But no, I'm excited about today's talk here with Martha and learn a little bit about her relationship with Mr. Stagg, one of my favorites, in the bourbon industry. So really excited to talk to her.
Yeah, you were even saying that you're, what are you drinking on right now?
I poured a Stagg Junior just for, this show. I don't have a regular Stagg. Maybe Martha can help me out and become my friend, and we can share our resources.
There you go. So with that, let's go ahead and introduce our guests. So today we have on Martha Carlin. So Martha isn't a master distiller or a tour guide at a distillery, and I want to let her go ahead and introduce herself. So Martha, welcome to the show.
Thank you. You're right. I'm not a master distiller. I do ferment a few things like vegetables and that sort of, and have made some beer, but I've never tried to make whiskey.
Well, I don't think you should. Last thing I read, I think it's illegal to try to do that. So.
Well, yeah, we did look up how to do it though, and so I am George T. Stagg's great granddaughter, and in 2002, when they bottled the first Stagg, they gave my mother a commemorative copper still. I don't know if it actually works. It's at my house, but I keep thinking maybe I should go get it and we could try to figure out how to use it and
try to see if it still works and try to get some white dog out of there.
He says it's just decorative, but I'm not sure about that.
Well, yeah,
Nice.
you got to put it to try to see if it'll work, right? I mean, I think you just can't let these things sit on the shelves and look pretty.
Yes, that's right. Well, it should be, that shouldn't sit on the shelf, and I actually think the Stagg shouldn't sit on the shelf. Somebody who truly appreciates it should drink it, but
Yeah, so one of the reasons that we contacted Martha to have her on the show today is because there was actually an article that came out on thebourbonbabe.com. And it was an article that talked about right now there's an auction going on, and it's for a gaggle of Stagg. So Martha, give us some information about what this auction's all about.
So the auction is an annual fundraiser for my son's Jesuit high school to fund scholarships. About 35% of the boys who go to his school are on scholarship. And I have been collecting the Stagg really since it came out in 2002, although at that time we drank most of it every time we would get it because we didn't really realize how
Precious it was
going to be. I'll tell you a terrible story. One time I put some in eggnog.
Oh man. That's great.
You can always, hindsight's always 20/20, right?
Yeah. In those early years, we didn't, and it wasn't that popular either. So my brother actually, I think it was the 2004 bottling. He was in, he still is. He has his own consulting business, and he bought a bunch of cases to give as gifts at Christmas time to all of his clients. So, anyway, between the two of us, we managed to have, not quite a full collection, but we have assembled 11 bottles, so 2004 to 2014, a bottle from each year. I think I don't have it with me, but the 2005, which is the year where they had they had like a Series A and a Series B and then a fall. We don't have the one that everybody is really, really trying to find. I think that's a Series B.
You know what? You got the name. I think everybody's trying to look for it anyway. I don't think it really matters what year you have.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, we have 2004 through 2014, so 11 bottles that have been donated, and it's an online auction. The Regis Jesuit Lark High School 2015 auction, and you have to go to their website. It's not the most user-friendly website, but you go to the website and get a username and ID, and then if you go to the libations section, it's the number one item in the libations. And the bidding opened on April 9th, and it runs through April 19th. So we still have a few more days. If you have some money left over from paying your taxes tomorrow, you should get out there and bid, and then you can deduct it for next year.
See, that's perfect.
Awesome.
I think we all probably could have used that advice before we got the.
Before I filed mine today.
Exactly.
I'm like kicking myself today now. Wish I knew about this sooner.
Yeah, it looks like there's a minimum bid. It starts at $3,000. So what's it up to about right now?
It's at $3,750. The last time I checked, I may try to see if I can check while we're on here. But
It's all good. I think that's going to give our readers or our listeners a very good understanding of how valuable this can be or what it should be. So I guess let's also kind of talk about, your past and your history, right? So you are the great-great-granddaughter of George T. Stagg. And I guess, did you have a lot of, kind of a bourbon kind of family growing up? Was there a lot of things that were very centric around it? Or was it maybe just in the past few years where you recently discovered that it was bigger than you thought it was?
We just grew up in Frankfurt. The distillery was just, kind of part of our history. But the family sold the distillery during Prohibition. But it is the only, the only or the longest continuously operating distillery. It did continue to operate throughout Prohibition because you could get whiskey with a doctor's prescription. I think there were about 4 million of those written. But
and that was still the Stagg distillery during Prohibition, correct?
It was the Stagg distillery during Prohibition, and then I'm not sure when it changed over to Blanton. I think was next.
Mm-hmm. And then what's the current day Buffalo Trace?
The current day Buffalo Trace. And there was a period of time in there where the Japanese owned it for a while. So a lot of the, actually the Blantons with the horses on the top of it,
mm-hmm.
They do a special bottling of that where most of that actually goes to Japan and has a Japanese, a certain label for Japan.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely one of the harder ones to come by. It's called Blanton straight from the barrel. So it's actually a barrel-proof Blanton's that you can't get here in the States.
Yes. But, growing up in Frankfurt, it seems like almost every morning, of course, that was a long time ago, I could smell the sour mash when I was out waiting at the bus stop. And when I was a kid, I thought it smelled terrible. And now every time I come home, I think it smells great. It smells like home.
I have the same feeling. I'm from Bardstown, and growing up, I was like, what is that awful smell all the time? And now I'm just like, embrace it. I'm like, oh, I'm back home. I can smell this awesome mash.
Well, see, I live in Louisville, close to the Butchertown, and
it smells like shit.
Yeah, Butchertown always smells like Butchertown. You never want to be around it. So.
Yeah.
We would also go down to, my dad would go down to the distillery and get the old barrel staves or from the lids of the barrels. And we use that as kindling for our fire. So you can really light a fire fast with that. And it smells good too.
Nice.
So I guess that's one of the perks of kind of growing up around Frankfurt is that you had access to all that sort of stuff. But, with your family around Frankfurt, I mean, I guess, did a lot of people like kind of grow up in the bourbon industry around there? Do you still have family into it?
So, George T. Stagg's son, Frank Stagg Sr., he actually went back to work for the distillery a few years after it was sold. And he was the treasurer and something else all the way through until he died in the 1940s. So he stayed working there through that time. His son, who was my grandfather, Frank Stagg Sr., I think worked as a night watchman when he was younger, because I still have his the distillery night watchman's badge. And then,
yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good topic to kind of bring. You sent us this PowerPoint for any of our listeners. You sent us this PowerPoint before we came on and had all these vivid images and descriptions of your family and the Staggs. And I guess that was one of the things that you showed us was that badge was the night watchman's badge.
yeah, it's kind of cool. It's number 9. I don't know how many watchmen there were, but I imagine they had to keep a pretty tight watch over things. But as I was researching to put the presentation I sent you together, I did that at the Legends of the Industry dinner at Buffalo Trace in January. I came across an interesting story. My mother has a lot of historical papers, and my great-great-grandfather still down that Stagg branch, but a different part of, or down my mother's side of the family. It had the records of a fire that happened in Frankfurt in a bonded warehouse, and they lost something like close to 4,000 barrels of whiskey, and my grandfather lost about 300 of those. And I think we figured out that in today's dollars, that would have been something like $500,000 back then.
Oh yeah,
My
I
gosh.
mean, that's to think back then what it would cost, and now with inflation and especially the economy the way it is, yeah, it could definitely net that much.
And then on my father's side, so he obviously wasn't a Stagg because it's my mother's side of the family, but we found out just by chance the local public TV was showing some old pictures. And one of the pictures was of my father's mother, and he remembered when he was a little boy, my grandfather was off at the war, and his mother, the whole bottling plant was all women, and his mom worked in the bottling plant, and they had a photograph of her bottling the whiskey. So, I had that. So we had people on both sides of the family. And then my cousin works there now, in the gift shop. So she's my mother's sister, so one of the other Stagg girls. But there were the last generation was 3 women, so there's no male Stagg left.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess is there maybe going to be another tradition going on? Do you have? I guess you already said you have a son. Do you think he might follow in the footsteps of his great grandfather or anything like that?
Well, you never know. He's the one who I got him fermenting the beer, and he made some pretty good beer, and he was only 16. I don't know. On here.
We don't have to cut it out, but we won't now. I think that's too good. That's a gem right there.
So he was actually at his Jesuit high school. There was like the history of the world and 6 beverages or something. I can't remember what it was, but it was the different fermented beverages and how they had changed the world. And, so I proposed an idea that we would try to make each one of them. But so far we've only made the beer.
That sounds like a good project.
A little behind.
Well, I mean, you do know that bourbon is America's only native spirit, so I think you probably should at least give him that sort of background in history, so he can experience his family roots.
That's true, and there are a lot of boutique distillers out here in Colorado that are kind of experimenting with different things, and I chuckled a few years back. It was probably 3 years ago. I walked into the local liquor store, and back on the shelf was this bottle of Stagg sitting there. And I have no idea. They had no idea what they had, obviously. So I grabbed it and walked up front to pay for it. And the guy said, "Oh, you should get you some Stranahan's." And I looked at him. I thought, "Oh, you have no idea."
I'll pass on that. I appreciate the offer.
Oh, you fool.
Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify's point of sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. And with Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone. Transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system, or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bourbon, all lowercase, and go to shopify.com/bourbon to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bourbon. If you're anything like me, then you can't get enough about bourbon. And that's why I'm a subscriber to Bourbon Plus magazine. Bourbon Plus is a quarterly publication that tells the stories from the heart of bourbon, the farmers who grow the grain, the distillers who labor over the process, and the people like you and me who raise their glasses to celebrate it all. Subscribe to Bourbon Plus magazine today at bourbonplus.com, that's PLUS.com, and use code PURSUIT at checkout for $5 off your subscription.
So I guess, do you have any memories of maybe your mother or your grandparents kind of ever telling some stories of George T. Stagg or anything like that?
I don't, because he actually died when he was fairly young. He died at the age of 59. So he died before, my mother or any of her sisters were born. Now, they remember his son, Frank Stagg, who ran the distillery till the 1940s, and they were, and they've told some stories about him. But
well, how about some of those stories? Anything good that can come to the top of your mind? That
just he was a really good. He was a close friend of the painter Paul Sawyer, and I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a local Kentucky artist. And he was kind of the starving artist at the time. So my great-grandfather would give him, buy his paintings, and to give him pocket money, and they hung out a lot. So we actually have one of the largest collections of original Paul Sawyer paintings in the family, just from him trying to support Paul Sawyer. But, both he and his dad, George T., were big fishermen. And they used to go to the coast and go down to Florida to go fishing. And I believe in some of the papers it showed that he had a yacht down in the Gulf or in the Florida Keys area. So that was kind of interesting. And I had some of the old photographs of some of the fish he caught when he was deep sea fishing.
So I guess with that, were you doing a lot of this research to find all this, whether it was on, whatever kind of family tree website, or is your mom kind of a big buff into it as well?
Well, a lot of this was in my mother's papers. My mother passed away in 2006, so she wasn't really around for me to ask. Now, my aunt, my mom's sister, who's 89, is still alive, but, we went through some of this, and she actually, told me some of the stories about my great-grandfather Stagg. But most of what I got, the research was in the papers that my mother had, just boxes and boxes of these old papers, which is kind of interesting. One of them, there was a clipping of the death notice of George T. Stagg when he died, because they mentioned that he was one of the richest people in that section of the country, which I guess would be a whole lot of money back then, because it was 1880, I think. And we're just wondering what happened to all the money.
Yeah. It was funny. Even before we were coming on here, I was just like, I looked at Martha on LinkedIn, and, she's like an investor and all this other kind of stuff. I was just like, but I don't want to go talking about, because you said, within the PowerPoint, it said like, this article, it said, he was he left a lot of riches to his family. And I was just like, well, I don't want to sit there and ask her if like she's old money or something.
He laughed. So, but he had a second wife. And, I don't know if the money went there or,
went all to Paul Sawyer.
Or, well, the 1920s weren't too long after that. So, they could have lost a lot in the stock market, I guess.
Oh, yeah. So,
but there's nothing left for me. There was nothing left.
You did everything you did on your own, right?
That's right.
All right. So I guess there's another picture that's in this PowerPoint. And for anybody that for any of our listeners, we're going to put, if we can with permission, put some of these pictures online so you guys can see them on our website.
Sure.
But there's one with a lock of hair and looked like a folded sheet of paper. Can you explain that's about?
Well, this was really interesting. So it was, I found this, there was like a tin box of some of his things, and that's where the article about his death was. But this envelope said this envelope was found in the back of one of his picture frames that sat on his desk, and it's a recipe for a sedative. So, and then it had a lock of hair folded up into it, which, seems kind of unusual to me, but I have no idea. But I just thought it was kind of fascinating that he had this concoction of a sedative in the back of his picture frame.
I mean, I guess back then it was all about experimentation. They didn't have the luxuries of modern medicine because, I guess cocaine was okay back then, right? So might as well just throw some other things together and figure out what's going to stick.
Yeah, and then when you read it, I can't really even tell exactly what the formula is. It has some kind of salt and some Camp X and something A-phenol, or I don't know what it is. But anyway, I thought it was pretty fascinating that he had that. He had that in there.
And then, so George T. Stagg actually died in Baltimore. Is that correct?
Yes, he did. And I have still been trying to poke around and find out why he was in Baltimore. And I have yet to find anything out about that.
Any ideas? Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering. Any kind of theories? He
could have been fishing there. Because along that coastal area, some of the pictures appear to be more, coastal along there. The other thing is, his son went to school, back east somewhere. And I'm thinking that may have been in the Baltimore area, but he's actually buried in Richmond. So he lived in Richmond. Then he went to St. Louis. So he was born in Richmond. He moved to St. Louis, and he was actually he worked for a liquor distributor there. And that's how he found out about the distillery, which was E.H. Taylor, I think. Mm-hmm. And then when Taylor put a bunch of money into the distillery and was having some trouble, he kind of swooped in and bought helped him out. But they didn't get along too well after that.
It kind of seems there's that I mean, I think that happens with a lot of things in history, right? Between a few other different distilleries where, they all kind of come together and then they all go separate paths. And then, I mean, not only that even E.H. Taylor came up with his own line of trouble where he left the E.H. Taylor brand behind and went and opened up Old Taylor, even though they're owned by the same thing, or, it's the same name. You've got Basil Hayden, and then you've actually got Old Grandad, and, the picture of Old Grandad is actually Basil Hayden on the label and stuff, right? So it's always kind of funny to kind of see how these things went down in history.
Well, and then you'll really get a chuckle out of this, because a big part of my career has been in real estate. And one time while I was home visiting during the big downturn, I was poking around, and I don't even know how I ended up out the road where the old Taylor distillery is, but then I found out that my cousin insured the building for the people who owned it, and they were using the warehouse wood for scrap, like they were selling it overseas for construction, the bricks and the wood out of there. And I actually looked into trying to buy it and went out and spent an afternoon kind of poking around. I thought, well, wouldn't that be neat if I got into the bourbon business? But it looked to be a rather large undertaking, and not being from the business, I thought that probably wasn't a real smart idea.
Yeah, and now they're getting ready to reopen it too. So Old Taylor's getting a revitalization. They're getting ready to have the first woman master distiller is actually going to take care of it. So it's going to be turning over a new leaf there.
That's great.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the sheet of paper in that PowerPoint you sent, and it's his notice. It says by Western Union Telegraph. It basically talked about, the father died this morning at 1:00. And was there any indication of like what the cause of death was to George or anything like that? Or is it just kind of
no,
and never going to know about?
Well, I'm still trying to. I'm actually working with a researcher at Ancestry.com to try to pull the death record for that. I have a lot of that on, various people in the family because I've done a lot of the research, but I don't have his, so I don't know why. But 59 seems pretty young.
Oh yeah. So I guess it's another thing. It's really kind of cool how you're able to find all of these different documents. Was this just something that you kind of talked about earlier? Your mom just kind of was like, I don't want to say a hoarder, but she was holding a lot of these things, or did you have to go and dig around through like the archives within Baltimore to find any of these things?
No, my family has been in Frankfurt they were some of the original people in Frankfurt. So there was always kind of a keeper of the papers, I guess. So from each generation, somebody kept all of the photographs and documents and diaries and cookbooks, and that just passed to my mother because her two sisters were not as interested in it, and my mother was very interested in genealogy and all the history and all of that, so she kept it and organized it by different branches of the family, because we also have a branch of the family that was a famous fishing reel maker that won 3 World's Fairs. So we have a lot of intelligent people in the family.
I was about to say, you guys just bleed greatness then. Is that what it is?
Or, we're tinkerers for sure.
Well, so I guess, kind of wrapping up here, I guess how would you kind of summarize, if you could, in like in a few sentences, about your great-great-grandfather's life? We know that he was an avid fisherman, really into the whiskey industry. So anything that you kind of want to kind of close with?
Well, just that, I think he was an adventurer and a bit of a pioneer, and a pretty astute businessman all across the board. I think his, the bourbon that they've made in tribute to him is pretty darn good stuff. And I would say, please go bid at the auction and, support a good cause, and you can write off your 11-year stash of Stagg.
There you go.
Hey, I'm all for that.
So I guess one of the other things is, though, everybody's kind of getting to know George T. Stagg a little bit more and more, and these bottles are getting harder and harder to find. So, I guess the good thing is with you living in Colorado in the Denver area, hopefully it'll be a little bit easier to kind of get it, because around here in Kentucky, it's slim pickings.
It ain't happening.
It's interesting. So I had the distributor when they first started making it. It wasn't sold in Colorado, and we worked with Mark Brown and Chris Comstock to get the some distribution out here so that I could have mine shipped out here because it's too hard to ship it.
Oh yeah,
illegally.
Little
hard to do that.
There's some red tape involved. Last I heard,
there's a lot of red tape involved. So they started shipping it here, and as it started to build a following, the liquor store where I would pick mine up, they would get a larger allotment. And a couple years in a row, people lined up outside the liquor store and they let them buy one bottle each. And last year, I knew that the Stagg was out. I knew that because all my relatives at home had gotten theirs, and I still hadn't gotten my call about where mine was. And we had a little bit of a scuffle. But I heard that what some of the distributors are just taking a little bit longer to get it out in different areas. So anyway, it was about a month. It was about a month later than it usually was, and I was getting pretty stressed out.
You're getting antsy.
I didn't get any, but the liquor store actually didn't get any except the bottles that I had gotten.
Oh,
so
there you go. It's good to see. We were talking about it earlier with the Pappy. It's good to know people, right? You're able to get those connections.
Well, it's funny because my brother lives in North Carolina, and he drives home to Kentucky to get his. And when he went to get his this past year, he stopped by. There's a little wine and bar right on Broadway there in Frankfort, and they have Pappy's if you want to get a taste of Pappy's. But anyway, he went in there and traded him a bottle of Stagg for one of their bottles of Pappy. And then he actually, I think he called Julian Van Winkle and because he had a client who was really looking for a bottle. So, I mean, it's nice to have the Stagg name if you need to get
yeah, drop that name. We'll get you far in this
and
business.
that's my brother's middle name. So my brother's name is Frank Stagg. So
I tell you, Cecil doesn't work really well for me, having that last name.
Yeah, well, for me, they always ask me if it's coolers or lanterns, what kind of business I'm in.
Oh.
Yeah.
As being a Coleman.
That's right. I get it. I have a few Coleman lanterns.
Well, I would say I wish I could say you could thank somebody in my family, but I have zero connections to them.
Oh.
So I guess to kind of wrap it up, you've got this gaggle of Stagg out here, and have you tasted pretty much like everything within all these years? I mean, I know you said you used to do bastardous things and mixing with eggnog. I sure hope you've learned your way since then. But is there any one that you would say stands out above the rest?
Oh gosh, the memory fades, because you drink the 2005 and then it's gone. So. It would be really nice though to have them all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like
to compare.
To compare. And that, it is nice when I go to the Legends dinner and they at least give you 2 or 3 years in a row, to see the differences, because they really do have, subtle differences, but you can definitely
Oh yeah,
tell, but I can't off the top of my head tell you my favorite.
That's all good.
Didn't Harlan say like the 14 was one of the best ones? This recent one.
Well, I know for a fact it's one of my favorites from this past year. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And do you both have a bottle of that?
I do not. Kenny has, I think, some. I do not. I have Stagg Junior, but not a Stagg. I'm just a rookie.
See, I don't know if I have an extra 2014. No, I have I have one bottle of 2013 in my.
I'm not greedy, so I'll take whatever.
So next time I'm home, maybe I can let you have a bottle of the 2013 that I've been hiding out in the basement of my aunt's house for somebody special who really appreciates it.
Oh my gosh, that would be incredible.
There you go.
I'll take you to dinner on me, wherever you want, except Jeff Ruby's.
He'll spray your lawn with chemicals too for free.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so great. So I guess we're going to wrap it up here for anybody that has gone through this. We probably should have started at the beginning. If you've never heard of George T. Stagg, it's part of that Buffalo Trace Antique collection. It's an uncut, unfiltered bourbon. It's always usually almost close to 140 proof every single year. So it's a fantastic bourbon that always comes out in the fall, and it's definitely something everyone wants to get their hands on. So again, Martha, Carlin, we want to thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure talking to you, understanding the history of your family and George T. Stagg and kind of the impression that he's left on the bourbon community as a whole.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, good deal. So if you like what you're hearing, you want to hear more, make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bourbon Pursuit, and you can also like us on Facebook.
Yeah, thanks again, Martha. That was great hearing all the stories and stuff. And please call me as soon as you get here. If I come to Frankfurt, I will gladly come take you to dinner and meet you to get my stag. No, but anyways, yeah, appreciate you all listening. Any comments, feedback, suggestions? We're just looking to improve the show. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.